It happened live on national television. Millions of viewers were watching when Barack Obama suddenly paused, leaned closer to the microphone, and delivered a line that sent shockwaves across the country. Without warning, he declared that Donald Trump had been hiding a mistress for years, a woman whose name had been buried under layers of secrecy and intimidation. The air in the studio shifted instantly. Gasps erupted, reporters scrambled to capture every word, and the audience held its breath as if the ground had opened beneath their feet. Obama did not shout. His voice was calm, deliberate, but every syllable cut like a blade. He said America deserved the truth, and he was tired of watching one man escape accountability by hiding behind spectacle and distraction. He claimed there were witnesses, documented meetings, and whispers that had been suppressed for far too long. The revelation did not sound like rumor. It sounded like a verdict. Trump, seated just a few feet away, froze for a fraction of a second before forcing a laugh that echoed uncomfortably in the hall. The cameras caught the twitch in his jaw, the way his shoulders stiffened. His laugh was not confidence, it was defense. Obama, however, refused to flinch. He looked straight into the camera as if addressing not Trump, not the studio audience, but the entire nation. And then it happened. The camera panned briefly to Melania Trump. Her face drained of color, her hand clutched the armrest of her chair, and the silence around her became louder than any word spoken. Viewers across the country leaned closer to their screens, sensing that they were witnessing not just a political scandal, but a family fracture exposed in real time. The hook was set. This was no longer just another televised sparring match between two powerful men. This was the moment where secrets became weapons, where reputations could crumble in seconds, and where even the most carefully guarded image of the Trump family began to collapse before the eyes of the world. The clash was already historic before the revelation. Barack Obama and Donald Trump had long been locked in a rivalry that went far beyond politics. Obama, the former president who symbolized composure and eloquence, and Trump, the brash showman who thrived on disruption, had faced each other countless times in words and actions. But this night was different. This was not a debate over policy. This was a battlefield of reputations. The setting was a live televised forum meant to highlight contrasting visions for America. Networks had billed it as one of the most important broadcasts of the decade. Millions tuned in, expecting sharp exchanges, maybe even a few memorable insults. Nobody imagined that the evening would detonate into scandal. On stage sat Trump, wearing his signature confidence-like armor, prepared to brush off criticism with smirks and interruptions. Obama, in contrast, carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had already weathered storms and no longer feared the lightning. Between them sat moderators struggling to hold the balance, while the audience in the studio bristled with anticipation. And then there was Melania, seated in the front row, her presence both symbolic and deeply personal. She had endured years of whispers, innuendo, and headlines about her marriage. Always poised, always silent, she had built her image as untouchable. Her eyes rarely betrayed emotion, her words were few, and the press had learned that she preferred mystery over exposure. That night, however, her position was far from ceremonial. She was no longer just the elegant former First Lady observing the clash of titans. She was part of the story, a silent participant whose reaction would soon eclipse even the fiercest words spoken on stage. The weight of the moment pressed on every corner of the hall. Moderators shuffled their notes nervously. Reporters backstage typed frantically as social media platforms exploded in real time. Clips of Obama's words spread within seconds, hashtags multiplying, timelines filling with shock and speculation. Trump's allies tried to spin the outburst as a desperate attack, while his critics declared it the long-awaited exposure of hypocrisy. Every player in this drama, Obama, Trump, Melania, the media, and the public, was locked in a vortex of spectacle. Each carried their own stake, their own version of truth, and their own breaking point. And within this swirl, the line between personal humiliation and political warfare grew thinner by the second. Trump leaned forward, his face red, his voice sharp. "This is pathetic, Barack. You're digging through garbage because you've got nothing else. You want attention? Fine. You've got it, but this is fiction. Total fiction." His words echoed, but they did little to drown out the tension already suffocating the room. Obama didn't flinch. He spoke with the same calm cadence, his tone cutting deeper than any shout. Fiction? Then explain the hotel records, explain the witness accounts, explain why the same woman appears again and again, connected to you in places where you claimed you were never present. The studio erupted in gasps. Viewers at home typed furiously, desperate to catch every detail before the story spread further. Trump snapped back, his finger jabbing toward Obama. You're a liar, and you've always been a liar. The people know it. They saw what you did to this country. And now you want to drag my family into your sick obsession? You think anyone believes this nonsense? But Obama wasn't addressing Trump anymore. He turned his gaze directly to the camera. This isn't about me. This is about honesty. This is about a man who built his power on deception, who mocks the very people who trusted him. America deserves the truth, even if it's ugly, even if it's uncomfortable. The moderators tried to intervene, voices trembling as they begged for order. Gentlemen, please, let's return to policy. But the policy was gone. The debate was over. What remained was raw exposure, a collision of ego and truth that no moderator could contain. Reporters in the press box whispered furiously. Some called producers to confirm the documents Obama hinted at. Others drafted breaking headlines before the segment had even ended. On social media, the fight was instant. Hashtags like #HiddenMistress and Obama exposes. Trump climbed to the top of trending lists within minutes. Memes, screenshots, and video clips circulated with wildfire speed. Melania sat motionless, but her stillness only amplified the storm. Every camera searched for her reaction. Every viewer waited for the slightest flicker in her eyes. And then, as the shouting escalated, she whispered words caught by a nearby microphone, barely audible but chilling in their weight. Not again. The phrase ignited a new frenzy. What did she mean? Was this acknowledgement? Was this despair? Commentators dissected the two words as though they were scripture, proof of betrayal that had been buried for years. Trump heard her too. His head snapped in her direction, his expression momentarily cracked before he slammed his fist on the podium. "This is an ambush," he shouted. "A disgusting setup." But no one was listening anymore. The conflict was no longer just between two men trading accusations. It was now between a husband and wife under the glare of the entire world, their marriage dragged into the battlefield of politics, their silence and words weaponized in real time. The tension snapped when Melania finally rose from her seat. The studio went silent, the audience frozen, the camera zooming in as though history itself was unfolding. For years she had been silent, a polished figure at her husband's side, never allowing cracks to show. But this moment was different. Her voice, steady yet laced with fury, carried through the hall. "You humiliate me again and again," she said, her accent unmistakable, her words trembling with restrained rage. "Always another woman, always another lie, and now the whole world sees." The room exploded. Reporters shouted questions, moderators begged for calm, and Trump's face collapsed into panic. "Melania, stop, sit down, this is not the place," he barked, but his command only deepened the drama. Obama stood motionless, his eyes fixed on her, not with triumph, but with the gravity of someone who knew the moment was bigger than politics. "The truth is painful," he said quietly, "but it is always better than the lie." Melania turned toward the camera, her hand trembling as she clutched the microphone. "You ask about the mistress? I asked too. For years I asked, and every time he denied, every time he called it fake. But the truth always finds a way to surface. Tonight it surfaced for all to see." The audience gasped again. Trump stepped forward, trying to seize control, but Melania's words had already cut deeper than any accusation. In that instant, the scandal was no longer theoretical. It was no longer a battle of evidence or denials. It was a confession of betrayal, delivered not by an opponent, but by the woman closest to him. The twist no one expected was not Obama's revelation. It was Melania's collapse into public truth. Her voice cracked, her knees buckled, and aides rushed to steady her as the weight of humiliation bore down. The cameras captured every second, replaying the image across millions of screens within minutes. For viewers, it was not just politics. It was raw human drama, a story of pride, power, and pain converging on live television. A presidency, a marriage, a legacy, all unraveling under the spotlight. And in the chaos, Obama's calm voice lingered like a verdict. This is what deception breeds. Not just division, but destruction. The stage was chaos, but the world was focused on one undeniable truth. The Trump image had shattered in front of millions. Melania's collapse was not just a personal moment of pain. It was the ultimate confirmation that the fortress of denial could no longer stand. Reporters filed urgent headlines within seconds. Obama exposes Mistress live. Melania breaks silence. Trump marriage implodes on air. Across America, households buzzed with disbelief. Social media turned into a battlefield of memes, sympathy posts, and furious defenses. For some, it was vindication. For others, it was devastation. But for everyone, it was unforgettable. Trump, shaken but still clinging to defiance, shouted into the microphone, "This is fake! It's all lies! Don't believe it!" Yet his words rang hollow, drowned by the images already looping across every network. The louder he denied, the weaker he looked, as though fighting against a storm he could no longer control. Obama, meanwhile, delivered the final blow without raising his voice. "The truth is simple," he said. "A man who cannot be honest with his family cannot be honest with his country." The audience erupted, half in applause, half in outrage, but the verdict was written in the silence that followed. Melania was escorted off stage, her face pale, her words still echoing. "Always another lie." That phrase became the headline, the chant, the meme, the memory. It pierced deeper than any statistic or political slogan. The broadcast ended, but the fallout had just begun. Analysts declared it a turning point, a moment when spectacle became history, when secrets turned into weapons, and when the line between private shame and public accountability vanished. In living rooms, bars, and offices across the nation, people repeated the same question. If this is what he hides from his own wife, what else has he hidden from us? The final message of that night was clear. Power built on deception cannot last. Once exposed, the truth spreads too fast, too wide, too permanently to be buried again. And as the credits rolled, one fact remained. This was the night the Trump legacy cracked open under the unrelenting glare of live television.